Saludos, familia mundial. Les habla Giselle Novacil.
Y yo soy Edwin Castillo.
Les hablamos desde nuestro canal Una Voz Mundial TV y estamos muy felices con sus suscripciones, también que están compartiendo nuestros videos, invitando a sus familiares y amigos a suscribirse a nuestro canal. Sígale dando a la campanita para que pueda seguir recibiendo las notificaciones de todo lo que le vamos a estar trayendo.
Así es, mi gente, y hoy tenemos una tremenda entrevista a una gran músico, profesora, que nos trae buenas informaciones acerca de la salsa y el jazz y otras cosas que suceden aquí en Nueva York.
Su nombre es Connie Grossman y estuvo en estos días acompañando al maestro de la charanga, Ivo Tirado. Estábamos en el Hunts Point Riverside Park y no se pierda esta entrevista.
Así es, mi gente, recuerda, dale a la campanita, suscríbete, que nosotros somos
Una Voz Mundial TV. Hi, my worldwide family. I am so happy to be here with you. This is Giselle Novacil, interacting with you through our new YouTube channel called Una Voz Mundial TV, where we are promoting artists in our community and other places internationally. We are so happy today to bring you this interview with an amazing artist, Connie Grossman. Hi, Connie.
Hi, Giselle.
How you doing, Connie?
I'm doing great. How are you? It's so nice to be here.
I am so amazed and inspired and excited that you agreed to give us this interview.
It's an honor.
So right now we are in the Bronx, New York, and you just finished performing. Amazing. We are just so excited of hearing you playing the flute, and we just want to know a little bit about you.
So I started playing the flute when I was about 10 years old, and I teach a band program. My day gig is I teach public school band. I've been doing that for a really long time. I taught in the South Bronx, then Yonkers, and now up in Westchester. And so my students start their instruments in 4th grade, just like I did. And I continued flute all the way up through high school. I also wound up playing oboe in 5th grade too. And in my senior year of high school, I had to make a decision. I was actually offered a full scholarship to Juilliard on oboe, and I turned it down because I didn't want to do it anymore.
Wow.
And I wanted to do improvisatory music, but back when I was coming up going to college, there really weren't college programs for improvisatory music, for jazz, for especially nothing for charanga. I didn't even know charanga existed.
Wow.
So I did a whole classical program. I was a classical flute major. And so my bachelor's degree is in classical flute. My studies are in classical flute. But when I left college, that's when I said, okay, now I'm going to be a jazz player. I'm going to improvise. But then I found out that unless you also play sax, there weren't, at least back then, a lot of opportunities for jazz flute. But then I discovered this type of music called charanga, Afro-Cuban dance music that used flute. The way I describe it to people who, like to the American audience, is the flute is to charanga what the lead guitar is to like a rock and roll band.
Wow.
So with charanga, the flute alternates with the singer and has dialogue, and it's the main improvising instrument, solo improvising instrument. And what I found over the years too is that there's a lot of dialogue that goes on between what I do and what the dancers do. So I wind up having dialogue with not only my fellow band members, but with the dancers as well. Things that I do, it's a very percussive sort of improvisatory music genre. So I find that I like to focus on particular dancers, watch their feet, and then try to kind of guide them to do certain things with where I put my musical hits, as well as they guide me. I let them too. I follow what they're doing too to get inspired. So, I mean, it was just perfect. It was, you know, it incorporated, and charanga actually came from a classical, it came from the French contra dance, from France to Haiti to Cuba. And
Wow.
where in Cuba, it mixed with the African rhythms of the percussion to form charanga. And then it came to New York to develop into what you heard today.
Wow.
So New York was really a place where a lot of things developed. And charanga was actually a predecessor of salsa. So,
So with that being said, Connie, how do you come across charanga? I am intrigued to know that because you're telling me you came into classic music.
yep.
You went around, you experienced different type of genres, but then you fell in love with charanga. How did you discover charanga? How did you fall in love with it?
Oh my gosh. Well, two different ways. One was once I graduated from my conservatory training, a college mate of mine, her sister was a dancer and she wanted me to teach her Cuban flute. And I said, well, I'll teach you flute. You can play anything on it. I had no idea charanga existed. Then she brought me recordings of Aragon and Orquesta Broadway.
Orquesta Aragon, yes.
And I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And then the other way was in my search for to get into more jazz, to pursue jazz studies, I wound up meeting Jerry Gonzalez.
Wow.
And he told me about charanga as well. And I was like, okay, I've got to explore this because flute is a necessary instrument in this form of music, whereas in other forms, it's not necessarily a key instrument unless you make it one. And then over the years, I kind of did. And about 20 years ago, I had actually started a Latin jazz CD. I formed one of my other, so some of my great mentors in this music were Eddie Zervagon from Orquesta Broadway. You know, he became a really dear friend of mine, but when I was first coming up, I would come to his concerts and he would always have me sit in.
Support him.
And in '92, I went to Cuba. I got to meet Richard Egues from Orquesta Aragon.
Wow.
So I got to really meet my superheroes.
So how was meeting Orquesta Aragon?
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. This was when I was first getting into charanga, and I was in Cuba. What brought me to Cuba was there was a study program where you could either study folkloric dance or percussion. So I studied percussion to really understand and get inside the rhythms.
Yes.
And I got to meet Richard Egues, and I remember somebody took me. He was doing a toque for Ochun, and he was playing with violins and you know, but it was still charanga style. But they also did danzons and other music like the cantos for Ochun. And somebody told him that, you know, here was this flute player from New York. So here's me. I was just, you know, really in my baby stages of charanga.
Yes.
And he hands me his flute, and I was like, me? Really? And he's like,
so you were doubting yourself at that moment?
Well, yeah, this is Richard Egues from Aragon. And I was just learning, right? So he passes me his flute, and he says, play. Yeah. So I start to play, and I looked at his face, and I see his face go like this. And he has this ear-to-ear smile. He light up. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And, you know, it was just a magical experience.
So from there was kind of like a confirmation that I was called to do this type of genre. This is where I am. This is where my rhythm.
I'm on the right track, right? And then I started playing, you know, up in New York. I was telling people I want to do this. And through, you know, telling people I wanted to, my first gigs in this music were actually with like a pickup band in an after hours club in the South Bronx. And then from there, I wound up with Charanzon.
Wow.
And after Charanzon, which we recorded, and then after that, I wound up with Son Sublime. And we have 3 albums, 3 CDs that you can get on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube. Bailando con Son Sublime, Irresistible, Gran Reserva. I'm the flute player on all of those. And we got to tour. You know, we did a lot of gigs in New York, but we also got to tour in all over the United States. And then we also went to Senegal.
Whoa.
Back in, I don't remember what year it was, but it was a number of years ago. But we spent New Year's Eve in Senegal.
Amazing.
It was amazing. It was so incredible. And they love charanga in
Tell
Senegal.
me a little bit about that encounter with Senegal. It's a different culture and all of that. How did that develop? What were your feelings? Just give me your impression as soon as you walk in there. You walk into Senegal from the United States. How do you feel, especially playing a Latin music,
Great.
Latin jazz?
So Senegal, their primary language is, aside from Senegalese, is French. They love charanga, and the reception that we got was amazing.
Wow.
We were so warmly received, and it was magical. And then after our gig, we also got to interact with some of the musicians there, which was also like incredible, hearing and playing with the music that they have as well.
Wow.
So it was just an amazing. I'd love to go back.
As an artist, that is like you reaching all the cultures.
It was a
How does
highlight.
that feels to you?
It was amazing. I
All the languages and all of that through music.
through music.
You connecting
Music is
worldwide.
Music is the universal language. It's there's no barrier. You speak music. Music is the same. I tell my students that as well. When I talk to my students, and then through my journey, also, as I said, I was also trying to explore my jazz. The whole jazz genre, and another great mentor of mine and who became a dear friend was Dave Valentine. And through that friendship, I got to develop the other side of my playing. And finally, after all these years, about a year ago, I finally released my Latin jazz EP. It's not a full-length CD, but it's 5 tunes. Two of them are my own compositions.
Wow.
One tune is actually dedicated to Dave, but it's called "Chasing the Sunset," and
So
it's
Connie
also
is a composer as well. He's a
of sorts.
composer as
Of
well.
sorts.
Yes,
I
you
mean,
are.
there are people who are real composers. I don't claim to, but I've written a couple of things. But yeah, so it's called "Chasing the Sunset," and it's available also on all digital platforms, on Apple Music, YouTube, Spotify, Chasing the Sunset, and you can kind of hear my other side, my Latin jazz side, and I have a third side.
What's the third side?
The third side is, years ago, I wound up co-leading a charanga band with a violinist, Betsy Hill, called Charanga Pasión, and it was an almost all-female charanga. 8 women, 1 guy.
Wow.
And
How did you master to make that happen?
So we were playing in charanga bands together, and we had kind of a vision of doing something a little bit outside the box. So the music that we have, I would best describe it as charanga moderna, not necessarily típico, what they call típico, but for instance.
So you can say it's a new movement, kind of. Kind of.
I mean, I don't know if anybody else has kind of done it.
No, so that's a new movement.
I'm working on trying to release that CD, but we did record, and we do "I Will Survive" in charanga.
No, you're playing me.
Yeah, no, you got it.
It's awesome. I will recommend. We gotta listen to this. "I Will Survive." We gotta listen.
"I Will Survive" in charanga, and then I wrote a tune on that album too called "Zabadap." It's a real danceable number. We do another tune, and that's in Spanish. We do another tune in English called "Love Isn't Cool," because the hook is "Love Isn't Cool, it's hot." And then we do a Gloria Estefan cover, a danzón, from Gloria Estefan's Mi Tierra album called "No hay mal que por bien no venga," because it's a great
And she
phrase.
speaks Spanish too. You hear me, right?
Rato, poco. And we do a tune from Estrellas Cubanas, which is more of like a songo kind of rhythm. Maybe I'm trying to think what else we do on that in our repertoire. Lou Pera's composition, arranged by Oscar Hernandez. The tune "Love Isn't Cool" and the arrangement of "I Will Survive" is by a violinist that we worked together, Dave Rimeles. What else?
Connie, but you are like well-rounded. You are telling me that I went into Latin music. I went into classical fluid, and then you came around. You're talking about danzón. You're talking about charanga. You're talking about visiting Cuba. I went to Senegal. You are an amazing artist, and on top of that, she is teaching Family,
And I
this is the
teach.
important part. She's giving back to the community. She's teaching in public schools.
Oh,
She-
I have a story.
Go ahead.
What are my teaching stories?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So
This is your show.
So back when I was teaching in the Bronx, this is probably my third year of teaching. A sixth grader comes up to me, and you know, I was teaching the kids were picking. I was teaching middle school, and the kids were picking their instruments. And back then in that school, part of my band instruments, along with the trombones and the trumpets and the flutes and the saxophones, I also included one electric bass, right?
Which one?
So this kid comes up to me, or actually he didn't. I came up to him and I said, because I knew he was going to be studying guitar after school, I said, why don't you play electric bass? And he was like, what's a bass? And I said, the bottom four strings of a guitar. And he was really talented, always had a great ear, but didn't want to read music. And then I was like, you want to get the good gigs? Get your music reading down. The people from Juilliard Pre-College came to recruit kids. They wouldn't listen to him because it was electric bass and not a classical instrument. I wouldn't let them leave until they heard this kid.
Wow.
And he got his music reading together. He played for them. And fast forward, this guy is now the musical director at Jazz at Lincoln Center, Carlos Enriquez. He's Wynton Marsalis' musical director and bass player. So
Amazing.
Now, another connection was where I first actually met him, and it was the summer before he started when I was teaching in the Bronx. I was playing with Yomo Toro for years.
Yomo Toro.
Many years. I started with Yomo back in 89, 88, 89. And we traveled all over the United States. We went to Berlin, we went to Puerto Rico, we went to New Mexico, we played in Canada. So it was, and his band was like family, it really was. And Yomo is just such a beautiful person and an amazing musician and so much fun.
So I keep getting amazed by all the stories that you're telling me. So you mentioned Yomo Toro, exactly, it's a journey. You mentioned Yomo Toro. So in that case, how do you feel about Pacheco?
Pacheco was I thought Pacheco was a great musician. He was a great phraser. When I was first learning charanga, I would listen to Pacheco's solos for the phrasing. He would tell a story when he would play. And that's one thing that Dave always told me too, Dave Valentino, tell a story. There's time to show off all your technique and all of the technical stuff, but you want to tell a story. And that's what music is about anyway. It's about communicating with your audience, telling a story, expressing what you have to offer. And it's just been such an amazing musical story and a musical journey. And I'm so appreciative and grateful that I got to tell my story.
I am so thankful that you agreed to tell the story through this channel. And all I can tell you, Connie, it has been an amazing time first hearing you perform and now having this interview for the people that didn't know, your journey and how much you promoted Latin music through worldwide. This is a show that is meant to be a worldwide show and to give a voice to the artists here in New York and all over the community. So I want to invite you to invite your friends, relatives, and all your followers to follow our channel, which is called Una Voz Mundial TV.
Please listen to Una Voz Mundial TV. Una Voz Mundial TV. Porque you're going to see one voice for the world.
There you go. Thank you, Connie, so much. It's been a pleasure to meet you, to learn about your journey. Guys, thank you for following us. And we continue to be here. My husband, Edwin Castillo, right now is behind the camera, also producer of this show, a writer. Thank you, guys. To the next one. Somos Una Voz Mundial TV.